Well, in the month of November, I received a letter from him. And he sent me the Science newsletter dated October the 15th. And it was all about the positron. And the one who wrote it was Professor Richard Feynman. He was then professor of physics at Cornell University. 20 years later, only last year, they granted him the Nobel Prize in Physics for that paper. It took them 20 years to recognize what he said as theory back in 1949. And if I can quote it, this is it. The positron is a wrong-way electron. It's wrong way in every sense of the word. It moves backwards in time. It moves from where it hasn't been and speeds to where it was an instant ago. Arriving there, it is bumped so hard, its time sense is reversed and it moves back to where it hasn't been. Now that is not Neville speaking, that is Professor Feynman. For that he got the Nobel Prize last year. He said it's not only backwards in that sense, but even its charge is backwards. It's a positron, it's positive and not negative. And yet it is an electron. When they first observed it, or rather had it as theory, they did not want to admit it, but yet it fitted in with Einstein's theory, mathematically. So they had to in some way accept it, but no one had ever photographed it. Then came someone who photographed it in their studies of the cosmic rays. And here it was the actual positron. It seemed as though two were developed at a certain point. And it wasn't, said he, that one coming back, which was the positron, should, if it is bumped, it should be deflected and continue on its course, but deflected course. On the other hand, if it's bumped so hard, it's not deflected, it's reversed and moves forward in a normal manner to where it hasn't been. Well, I told him that I would sit at home and I would go into a section of time, even this year, for instance. This is now only April. I put myself in Christmas. I would feel the stores are all dressed for Christmas. I could hear the musical Christmas, all the carols. I'd walk through Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City, going to Best, going to the other, and I would feel all that I would feel if it were true that it's Christmas. That is the month of Christmas. And then when I feel that it's all Christmas, then I would feel that things are as I desire them to be back in the month, say, of March or July, which was certainly not Christmassy. So take a hot, hot day in July, and I'm feeling it to be cold, and snow on the ground, and all the dressings for Christmas. And then I would open my eyes and bounce back and shock myself, because it seemed so real to me that when I came back and opened my eyes upon July, and it's hot, I thought, now, are you kidding yourself? No, when I went forward in time, quite normally, waiting out the days, the months, to the month of December, things happened as I actually had assumed that they would. I went forward and predetermined what would happen. Well, when he sent me this, he wrote a sweet, lovely letter saying, Neville, I must confess, I didn't see it. No one saw it until Professor Feynman in his lab discovered this. But he discovered it by theory. And you tell me you know it by vision. You're not a scientist, and yet all that you said to me, which I could not believe, and even in this moment it's difficult for me to believe, here comes a great professor, a theoretical physicist, and he is the one who wrote this paper. For that he got the Nobel Prize last year. He worked on our atomic bomb, he worked on the hydrogen bomb. Then he asked the government to relieve him of the secrecy imposed upon him because of his position. And he came here to Caltech and taught at Caltech theoretical physics. He said, I want the freedom of imagination. I didn't want to be confined with the secrets of government so that I could not express myself. Leave me alone, all in theory. So he goes blindly on with his mathematics and his theory, bringing out these concepts, all theory. Well, mine is not theory. I go into these states. Now, look at it this way. See the whole vast world as infinite states. All states. If they're all states, and you are an immortal being, you're not a state, you are immortal. You enter a state, and the state becomes alive. Therefore, you are not to blame if you enter a state unwittingly, and it's a horrible state. Men not knowing that you are in a state, they condemn you. But you have to express the contents of that state. If you enter the state of poverty, you have to experience poverty. If you remain in it, you must go and drink that to the very last drop, the dregs of that cup. If you go into any state and remain in that state, you're going to drink it to the very last drop. But you can get out of a state. You don't have to remain in it if you know it's a state. If you don't know it's a state, you identify yourself with the state and think that you're it. Man has identified himself with this little body, and he thinks he is it. So the day comes, he has to discard it because he's worn it out. As he discards it, all of his friends are crying to think he died. He can't die. He is an immortal being who wore a garment of flesh and blood. That same being who goes into states, remaining in a state, and the state has to be expressed by him who resurrected the state. For I am the resurrection and the life of that state. Now, you can change an individual with or without his consent if you so desire. Here is the story of a friend of mine. I persuaded him to give up his job here. I knew he was a single man and he would like to do what I am doing. So I said, San Francisco is wide open. I only go there once a year for 4 weeks at a time. Now I have reduced it to 2 weeks at a time. But I used to go in the early years 4 weeks. I said, they need someone badly who knows this law. You can't teach the promise because you do not know it. You can tell it, but from hearsay, because you have not experienced the promise. But you do know the law. And you are presentable, you are a gentleman, you go up there, I will not give you any money. But I will give you my mailing list of 500. It's a live list. And you send out my list. When I go, I will tell them that I allowed you to have my list. And I will get behind you in that manner, but not in any other way. You've got to go on faith. Well, he quit his job here. He had seniority of 8 years in the place that he worked. He goes up to San Francisco, and he made arrangements to open. He had a little dog, lovely little dog, and he was walking this dog one afternoon before he opened. And a man came over and greeted him and said, what a nice little dog you have. And then after the usual greetings, he said, can you help me out? I haven't eaten today. I'm out of work. And my friend said, no, I can't give you any money. My friend did not move one step after he said no to the request. The man went on. He remained there until he imagined that man in his presence gainfully employed, happy in the job, and standing on his own feet. That was taken the story in the book of Acts, when a man came to John and Peter, and he could not stand on his own feet, and he was begging at the temple door. And Peter said, gold and silver have I not for thee, but such as I have give I unto you. Well, a month later, he was walking his dog, and he saw this man, and he crossed the street. The man crossed the street and came over to him. He said, I don't suppose you remember me. He said, oh, yes, I do. I remember you just about a month ago that you asked me for money. He said, yes, and I want to thank you for not giving it to me, and extended his hand to my friend. He said, had you given me the money, I today would be asking you for money. Because you did not give me, I was so embarrassed and so annoyed with myself that I put myself in that position. I went out the very next day and I got a job, a good job. It pays well. And it has promise of growth. And I am very happy in the job. So again, let me thank you for not giving me the money. He put the man on his own feet.